Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Radical with your boy, the big radical, Aaron Robinson. I am super excited for today's podcast, and the reason I'm very excited for today's podcast is a lot has happened this year. There's been a lot of thorns, and there has been a hell of a lot of roses. So basically today, I want to recap with all you, my radicals, how my year has been, and also what I have planned for 2023. So if you listen to the complete end of this podcast, I'm going to have some surprises for you. So you guys, my year 2022 was, I can't say it was a terrible year. However, it was a year filled with growth, and it still is a year filled with growth of learning opportunities, of mental health awareness, physical health awareness, and so much more. And coming into this year post-COVID, it was really different for me. A lot of people in my friend circle, as well as my husband and family members, they were like, oh, I cannot wait to get back to my old normal. I just want to get back to my old normal. And at the beginning of this year, my mind frame was complete opposite. I wanted a completely new normal. I also noticed that my old normal wasn't the healthiest, not physically, but more so mentally. I am one of those where I do not communicate very well, and that was kind of the start of the podcasts of Keeping It Radical. Was I really wanted to communicate the ins and outs of my life, of my career, and of my family life. And it has been very difficult, but at the same time, it has opened up a lot of doors. And so when 2022 really started, everyone wanted their old normal back, and I didn't want my old normal. I wanted a new normal. And what was that? What did that mean with things starting to open back up and people starting to see each other again and large groups coming together? But then again, we're worried about variants and everything. Like, how do you get back to a new normal? And that was honestly one of my biggest challenges this year. I kind of want to play a game. What were my thorns and what were my roses with you guys? And actually tell you the truth, I got this game from the Real Housewives of every season. They do it all the time on their reunion at the end. What is your rose of the season and what is your thorn? And I want to do this for my year. So there are quite a few thorns, but I feel like with those thorns came massive learning opportunities and massive growth for myself, which then really led into my roses of this year, and it's going to bleed into the amazing 2023 that's going to be next year. So let's start with some thorns. So thorns of 2022, life after COVID was not normal, and trying to get back to life after COVID, it was not normal. And somebody, one of my radicals, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that COVID just effed up 90% of people on this planet mentally, physically, emotionally, in so many ways. And it affected me too, and it really actually affected my relationship as well. And for the radicals out there who are self-employed and entrepreneurs, and if you work from home, COVID didn't really change a whole lot. If you already worked from home, well, COVID just made you really work from home. But when your other spouse also works from home and you're ordered to stay home and other things are not open and you're supposed to be in Carhartts and not with so many people, that was a very big challenge for me. Was what is life after COVID going to be like? And also, what were the mental health struggles that I had subdued for so long? How were those going to come out in this year of trying to relearn what I liked, what made me tick, what were my hobbies, and what do I want to do? Finding a new normal for me has been honestly a step-by-step journey along the entire way. I started therapy this year, and I have always been really reluctant about therapy. And I don't know if that's just the stereotypical man in me or if that is just I don't like to open up. I do actually think that not a lot of it, but some of it is systemic from my family as well as their family and generational. My prime example, me and my dad are I feel very similar in this way where we are very accepting of others and we love others, but still we can be a little bit quiet, but we don't really put our BS out there. We are those type where we're kind of like, hey, shit happened, shit got real, okay, there's nothing you can do now, you just got to move forward, you got to suck it up and you got to go. And in aspects, that is a great way to think about, if you fall, get up and do it again. But at the same time, if you do not deal with that at that time, it festers. And for me, I compartmentalize, I let it build, and then all of a sudden, big angry Aaron Gorilla comes out. And that was what I found COVID really did for me. And in this year, trying to find a new normal, I had pushed so much down that I had to start therapy, and I had to honestly really start thinking about, what do I want, and what do I want to put out there to people, and how do I want my relationship to go forward for the next 15 years. So therapy was a thorn, but it was also a very big rose, which I'm going to get into completely. But therapy was one. My relationship with Scott is not a thorn, but it has been a challenge this year. I think with a lot of couples, like, the divorce rates were through the frickin' roof through COVID. And, Scott and I were so strong with each other, and we were accepting, and we worked with each other, but it wasn't easy. And to be honest with you, even to today, in this very moment in time, our relationship is not easy. It is the biggest challenge I have. It is a lot. And so with our relationship after COVID, we really had to kind of learn each other again. We had to learn what made us tick, what was our love like, how could we switch things up, how could we experiment, and how could we get back to that place rather than just working from home, being from home, sitting at home, and just always being there. You really start to forget about that other person. And so it was a little bit of a thorn in my relationship, trying to get us back to a normal, back to a healthy relationship, rather than just pushing things aside and being like, okay, I'll address that later. And so therapy has helped a lot for that. And my journey with therapy really started when me and Scott really started to hit roadblocks and hurdles in our relationship. And they weren't massive, huge things that were going to split us apart. They could have, and maybe they almost did. But it was that push of that uncomfortableness in our relationship that really pushed me to be like, Aaron, we need to grow. And to grow, you need therapy in some way, shape, or form. So I got a wonderful therapist. His name is Rod. And when I picked a therapist, I went to my friend Whitney, who's actually a psychologist. And I went to her and I said, Whit, me and Scott are having some issues. I really want to work with a therapist. Do you know anyone? But my one thing that I want is I want somebody that is active in the queer community or is queer themselves, but somebody that lives in my shoes. And I don't mean that in a bad way, that I didn't want to talk to another heterosexual therapist or anything like that, but I just wanted somebody that could relate to me authentically from ground level up. And that where I could just say something that maybe in the straight world is not okay, but in the gay world is fine. I didn't want judgment. And in that, I asked Whitney, she gave me some names of people, and I stumbled upon Rod, and it was in a very low time in my relationship, as well as in the beginning of the year, where Rod just lifted me up. And he was the first person, not the first person actually, but he was the main driving figure to me that was in my court, if you know what I mean. I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of acquaintances, and Scott and I have a lot of relationships, but it's all intermingled. It is all intertwined with each other. And for the first time in therapy, I felt like I had somebody in my court that only cared about Aaron, that only cared about Aaron's progress and only cared about moving Aaron forward. And so therapy in that way, and we're going to get into the rows of it, was amazing. But at the same time, the thorn of going to therapy and realizing that I needed help, that was a thorn, and that was a push forward. So those were some thorns, and with those thorns come a lot of growth. And what I really see, hindsight's 2020, and looking back on this last year, a lot of my thorns turned out to be my biggest roses. So my biggest rose right now is 2022 was a massive year of growth, of personal growth, of relationship growth, of self-awareness. And also it has been a massive journey of me wanting to be 100% authentic with my audience and you guys, the radicals. And if you don't want to be called radicals, whatever, but just my audience. I feel in this world that we live in, And in business and entrepreneurship, we need to put our best foot forward. And in a lot of times in putting your best foot forward, you forget about all of the genuineness that you are, that is behind you. You forget about your authenticity. And what we really start to put forward are the three-piece suits, the fancy cars, and how big and how expensive is the next house I sell. And for me, that almost turned to a massive turnoff, as well as it became a massive mental barrier for me, always having to put that best foot forward. And so 2022, from also leaving a team previously in the year before, I had to find new footing. And again, being lost and trying to find that footing, it just helps you grow. My relationship with Scott is another rose where in April and May, the shit really hit the fan with him and I. And, it could have broken us, but I feel like it made us stronger. But at the same time, it brought up a lot of things that me and Scott have not communicated with each other about how we feel and our outlooks. And I feel sometimes when you are in a relationship, and I'm saying this from my standpoint, is when you're in a relationship when you're young and you love somebody and you love them so much, you almost forget about everything around you and you focus just on them. And I did a lot of focusing on our relationship, and I feel like I didn't do a lot of focusing on me. And when the shit hit the fan, it really made me realize, Aaron, you can't be in a healthy relationship if you are not healthy. And I actually went to my therapist, and this was the first thing, a little tidbit and nugget I'll tell you, radicals, is Rod said to me, he's like, Aaron, what is 1 + 1 in a relationship? And I said some smart ass remark like, ha ha ha, Rod, it's 11. And he stopped me. He's like, nope. Again, what's 1 + 1? And I said 2. And he's like, no, you're wrong again. In a relationship, 1 + 1 = 3. And I sat there and I kind of just looked dumbfounded and I was like, 3? What are you talking about? And he said, stop. Okay, in a relationship, you always have two parties. You have you, Aaron, and then you have Scott. Well, if Aaron doesn't work on Aaron and keep Aaron healthy, and Scott doesn't work on Scott and keep Scott happy, then that 1 + 1 isn't equaling up to anything. So if you're working on yourselves, great. But where's that third piece? And what Rod really told me is that third in our relationship is our relationship. So 1 + 1 = 3. I am 1 + 1, which is Scott, and it equals 3, which is our relationship. And for so long, it wasn't that we didn't work on our relationship. I think him and I coasted through our relationship. We got very comfortable with the way things were. We didn't really step out of our comfort zones to change it up, to switch it up. But again, COVID really just mentally screwed a lot of that as well. And it wasn't until this year where really the biggest rose came out, is where Scott and I had a massive blow up. And it made us realize that the path we're on is not the path that we can stay on if we want to be married long term or together for long term. So it really made a shift in our relationship and our dynamic to make it better. So a little bit of a thorn, but it was a massive rose, and it was a massive growing piece for me. I know if Scott was here, Scott has his own opinions and his own words, and I won't put words in his mouth, but I think that he has grown tremendously as well. And so our relationship has been a massive rose. Again, the therapy for me has been just mind-boggling. Being able to have somebody that has no bias or no recollection of your past or past relationships or mistakes. If I would have known this, I would have done this freaking years ago. And it is expensive. I cry every time. The drive home, because my therapy is in Sherwood Park, I live on the west end of Edmonton, that drive, 45-minute drive, is the biggest debrief of my life, but it is the biggest rose for me personally that has helped really shape who I am becoming. And I feel like this year has really put me on that path of, Aaron, you're getting to really understand who you are and what you can do. And therapy, I think, was just that key, that skeleton key that kind of opened up that door. So massive rose. Another big rose, which I am very proud of, is this podcast. Keeping It Radical was always something that I had thought about doing, but in the past, before I kind of started it as a podcast, I had this vision of it almost being like a vlog reality series about me. And as fun as and interesting as crazy shit I get into, I was almost like, oh my God, I don't feel like that. Maybe that's a little bit too much to show on film, but I want to really talk about it. And from my year of 2021 to 2022, I was a little bit in a funk. And that funk was I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to continue to market myself. I didn't know how to switch things up. I had left a team, which then I left everything behind with that. So I had to rebrand myself. And then when January 2022 came along, I hit a roadblock. And that roadblock was basically me just self-pity, feeling sorry about myself. Oh, I have to rebrand myself again, la, 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 la. And it wasn't until I had some really key players in my life that were like, Aaron, get the fuck up and just do it. And my whole excuse was, I have put myself out there so much. Why do I have to do it again? If it didn't work the first time, if it didn't work the second time, what makes me think that putting myself out there on a platform like this is going to work again? And it wasn't until like my husband and other colleagues were like, Aaron, get over it. People love you. People want to be led by you. You need to start believing it for yourself. And after months and months of talking with my team and marketing people, I had pushed it off long enough to where August I finally bit the bullet and I said, okay, I'm probably going to have a massive anxiety attack. And let me tell you, when my first podcast came out, I had a massive anxiety attack. But it was just something, I didn't want it to be a vlog. I just wanted to sit here and I wanted to be real to you. And I wanted to bring in real people and sit across from them and talk about our lives and what makes us tick and what makes us human, the good and the bad. Because that's what I really feel that the world needs. This whole facade about how everything is great and everyone has so much money, to me, it's complete BS. You can have money, you can lose money. You can have it all, you can have nothing. But what you do have is you have yourself and you have your experiences and you have your relationships with others and God and whatever. That was a massive rose for me, was starting keeping it radical. And actually, I put on my story, now like the podcast will show later, but I put on my story, I had a friend who I went to high school with, and she messaged me last night on Instagram, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback from my podcast. I haven't got any terrible feedback. I got one, and I'm just like, once you get haters, you know, you're making it. But her feedback to me was, she said, Aaron, I am just starting to take my real estate license in Toronto, and I just listened to your podcast, and holy shit, keep doing what you're doing. And what you talked about in your podcast, and the podcast that she actually listened about was, and I say for any industry professional or new real estate agent, realtor, go listen to it. It is what my insight, the things I wish I knew and I didn't know when I started real estate. She listened to that. And, you know, when I do these podcasts, to me, I just feel like I ramble. But again, my mission is if I can get one person to hear it, one person to relate to it, and it just to change an outlook or a life, then like what I'm doing is good. I am making the positive change that I want to be and that I want. And she reached out and she said, Aaron, I just listened to your podcast. I've been taking my real estate license in Toronto, and just listening to your podcast changed my mindset. It shifted everything for me, and it really kind of put into perspective what I'm doing, what I can be doing now before I'm even done my course to kind of get myself going and where to start. And that was honestly probably the best gift anybody could give to me, was just saying, keep doing what you're doing because you're making me want to do it even more. And so to that radical, thank you very much. And that was probably the best feedback. But that is why my rose for this year, keeping it radical, is that I stepped out of my comfort zone and I put myself out there again, and it has done nothing but glorious things for my followers and for me. And for me to continue to be able to do this with you guys is just absolutely amazing. My next rose of this year, and I haven't really talked a whole lot about it on this platform, Keeping It Radical, is I'm starting a team. And I'm starting a very, very, very different team. I have been part of real estate teams in the past, and, you know, they have always started out great. And then you pass that honeymoon phase, and then you really start to see the nitty gritty and seeing like what you're giving and what you're taking and what someone else is taking and then what they're giving. And it's just this constant, perpetual circle of regret, I feel like, as well as I almost sometimes felt like taken advantage of. And so this year, with Keeping It Radical, I really wanted to start a team because this world of real estate and entrepreneurship and self-employment, it is a lonely frickin' world out there. And not enough people talk about it. They talk about the great successes, that there's no glass ceiling, it is what you make, and that is all true. But most of the times you do it by yourself. And the lucky ones who have a business partner that they actually like, that they jive with, that they respect, they're lucky. They get to do it with somebody else. But again, it's the two of them. They are alone in their mission. When you are like me, it is a very lonely game. It's a very good game, but it is also very lonely. And even in this world of real estate too, everyone is so competitive with each other. And it's always like, oh yeah, you sold 15 houses this year? Well, I sold 35. Oh, well, I want to sell more houses than that top realtor over at RE/MAX. So now I want to sell 85 houses. And it's just this constant one-upping of oneself and others. And I have almost taken the opposite mindset of it, is to where like, I don't want to brag. I don't want to brag about it anymore. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the good things about real estate, the bad things about real estate, the industry, and how lonely it is. And that was a big part of me being lonely in my industry, is why I'm now starting a team. So in 2023, my big goal is I'm going to start bringing on other agents, other realtors from other brokerages, and maybe even looking at some people inside my brokerage to bring onto the team. And really what I want to do something different. I do not want to do a split team. In my opinion, split teams are very traditional and they're very old school, and there is always somebody at the top that somewhat seems to always have their hand out to the person at the bottom for whether it's 50, 40, or 30%. And I want to do something different. I want a non-split team. I want something where we can come together, collaborate as radical realtors, and become community connectors. Because really, at the end of the day, I sell a lot of homes. But what I mainly do is I connect people to a lifestyle, I connect people to a community, and I connect people to other people. Prime example, everyone says, oh my God, a realtor is always the first point of contact when they want to buy a house. Yes, they are. And when somebody comes to me, Aaron, I want to buy a house, you know what my first question is? Have you talked to a financial institution or a mortgage broker or your bank? Well, no, I haven't. Awesome. I have these financial institutions that I have relationships with. I have these mortgage brokers that I have relationships with. Let me give these to you. That is the first place to start. What did I do there? I just connected somebody to another person, and then they're going to connect that person to a whole other community. So really, this work that we do, or that I do so much more than sell houses, sell or buy the biggest purchase of someone's life. That is really what I do. But the community connectiveness of it, and bringing people in as well as industry professionals, as well as like my non-for-profit work with the Realtors Community Foundation, that is all part and parcel of what I want Radical Realtors to do. Is I want Radical Realtors to be community connectors. I want them to follow us around, and I want us to collaborate with each other in an authentic way that brings people together. And at the end of the day, what I have always heard and the biggest feedback I get is, Aaron, we love you. We love your personality. You're so freaking funny. Your cackle. Ah ha 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 ha. Selling a house is just a feature of you. We want to be friends with you. We want to get to know you. We want to be in your circle. Selling a house is what you do. It's not who I am. So I really want to start showcasing in this team who people are, who the realtors are, what makes them tick besides the fancy suits, the fancy cars, and the fancy homes. I want to showcase the agent. Everything else comes with that. So Radical Realtors, huge rows, and I'm very excited about that. More stuff, and you're starting to see some vlogs and that kind of stuff. So follow the vlog. You're going to love it. And when I start bringing on other people, we're going to start seeing the ins and outs of their life and that storyline and all that stuff of how they bring communities together. So super stoked. That's a major rose. My other rose was my trip to Newfoundland. Now, if you know me and Scott and I really kind of stick to the west coast of Canada. We have a love relationship with BC and Vancouver Island, mainly Ucluelet and Tofino. And like I've done some traveling as well, but then with COVID, when Scott and I really wanted to start traveling, when work was kind of slowing down and processes were getting in place, COVID hit, so we couldn't really go anywhere. So our first really big trip was my Century 21 Canada conference in Newfoundland. It was 3 days long. Me and Scott stayed for an extra 6 days, and that was amazing. Quick little tip or little like pro note about Scott and I. We have now been from tip to tip of Canada. We've been to the tip of the West Coast, to the tip of the East Coast. No dirty jokes inserted in here, but we have been tip to tip. So I kind of think that was an awesome rose. I'm like, oh my God, Scott, not a whole lot of people could say that. He's like, don't tell a lot of people that. And I'm telling everybody that. Now, my biggest rose and the thing that I am most excited for is I am planning for 2023. Radical Realtors is going to be a very big part of 2023, as well as my presidency at the Realtors Community Foundation. Starting January 1st, I am at the helm of the board, and I am very excited to bring a lot of new ideas and technologies and insights and really connect more people in the industry as well as the public to the Realtors Community Foundation and really showcase what charities we help and what our pillars are and what type of work we do in the community for grassroots charities. So I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited for 2023. I feel like 2022 was a reset year. It was a reset year to get my head on straight, my body on straight, my relationship on straight, which in parts is still rocky, but at least I feel like my foundation is a lot more solid than it was 11 months ago. So 2023 to me, I am very excited, and I cannot wait for this time next year when I give you an update on my 2023 and show you just all the big things that Radical is doing. Anyways, you guys, that is my podcast for today. It is my update for 2022 and what is coming at you in the next few months in 2023. So I love all of you. Thank you very much for tuning in, and Big Radical out.